Welcome back to another Agenty Digital podcast episode. Today I'm joined by Jason Rivera, the co-founder and CEO of Cabreza. Jason, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So, for the folks that don't know you, how would you describe yourself? Who is Jason?
That's such a loaded question. I'll stick to the professional version though. We'll keep it there. I have been in cybersecurity for more than 10 years now. I started off as a defender in a cybersecurity operations center at a consultancy before becoming a consultant. I then took a year consulting hiatus and built an InfoSec team and program at a cloud compute company before they were acquired. I then returned to consulting and fell into OT security and ultimately never looked back. I spent the next 5 years doing OT security tool deployments, controls developments, leading programs, many other things, ultimately building a successful practice at that firm before needing to do more on the OT market itself than just a service. And then at that time, I left and joined Gartner, where I was part of their cyber physical system security cohort. But I felt the pull to still do more. And that's why I ended up leaving and founding Cabreza, which I've been building and leading now for more than a year and a half.
It's interesting that you say that because I feel like most people, if they would be given a analyst seat at a company like that, it's sort of like the destination where most people want to get, right? And
Yeah.
so what actually made you leave and build your own thing?
It's the best way I can put it is, you know how when you watch, if you watch sports at all,
Yeah.
A lot of the analysts are former players, and they're the ones who like know the pitch or they know the field or they know the game and they're up in the booth. Every so often, there's that one analyst who's like, I don't care how old I am, I want to be back on that field. And that's kind of what happened to me, where I was analyzing and I was doing it's great work. It's satisfying. And there's a lot of complexity and a lot of cool stuff that you do. But I just had this like, I think I want to be doing it though, not analyzing it right now. And that ultimately led me to like, it was just kind of a conviction at that point that there was something I felt on that I didn't get to do yet that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. And so for people that might not know Cabreza, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys launched in 2025.
Yep.
So we are still in the early days. So who do you think benefits the most from what you guys do?
Great question. The smaller to mid-market critical infrastructure, utilities, and asset owner and operators. So smaller to mid-market, like there are water utilities and authorities and such who have, 500,000 to 1 million residents they serve. They're probably a little bit more resourced. They're going to have a big tool stack and, have maybe even budget to hire external resources. What I built Cabreza to do is similar to what we were talking about a moment ago, is with a mission to help critical asset owner and operators build their own protection themselves, to provide capability, ultimately, more than a license key or a statement of work, right? To actually impart the knowledge that exists within the industry, but make it actionable and effective, to take NIST SP 882 R3 or a ISA 62443 and like to do something with it, and to have that be a turnkey moment where you don't necessarily need my former self as a OT security consultant with billable hours. You don't need me if a solution can represent the experience and expertise that I have, and you can leverage that on your own terms. And so that's really what we've built, is leaning into that capability of like helping the individual owners and operators to understand what they need to do and do it themselves and understand.
Hmm. Is there any big misconception that you feel like people have around, critical infrastructure, OT?
Uh, I think the industry has done a really good job at clarifying OT and clarifying how it is different than IT. Um, I would say that I don't think there's a misconception per se. I think there's a lack of fundamental knowledge still. So less misconception and more kind of first principle fundamentals is where I see the challenges in the industry. There's this innate focus to like, go do this thing and go build around this. And this is headlines and it's the FUD mechanics, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt mechanics that lead into cybersecurity. And they still exist. And for what it's worth, they're also still effective sometimes, unfortunately. That's not the game that we play. And that's not, so what I mean by that is there's a shift to that stuff. And when it does, it kind of takes you away from the fundamentals of basic principles within industrial cybersecurity and industrial security itself. And that's probably more of the challenge I see than misconceptions per se.
Hmm. What's your take on the use of AI within cybersecurity?
Mm-hmm. uh, I think that there are some valid, incredibly valid, valuable, and fit for purpose use cases for AI in industrial environments as well as in industrial cybersecurity. Uh, that is my politically correct way of saying that I think there are plenty of not valid use cases for it,
Hmm.
and those are a matter of probably just more of a matter of opinion and bias than anything at this point. But I think that those use cases which are valid are clear and present and inarguable. And if we look at what machine learning and the current state of artificial intelligence brings to bear, I hope that a lot of people can make their own deductions as to where it's good to be used and where it's not. And I think that'll become more clear over time anyway.
Mhm. Jason, you call yourself captain of team discipline. uh, in March, you put that into practice with the Frontline Infrastructure Program, which was aimed at water utilities and rural co-ops. Mm, what did you learn talking to those operators that maybe you hadn't seen from kind of the consulting or analyst side?
Yeah. um, that we as cybersecurity practitioners need to stop talking and start listening more. It's kind of a contradictory way of going about our business because if you're a subject matter expert, it's like, okay, well, tell me what to do. But when you're working with smaller utilities and utilities in general, cybersecurity is a discipline in itself. And so if I'm classically trained to be a cybersecurity professional, then I understand the nature of things in cybersecurity and what should be done or what should not and can be done and cannot, all these things. But unless I've been in the shoes of a SCADA supervisor at a water utility or an emergency manager within energy, I don't know the world. And in order for any form of cybersecurity to actually be meaningful and adoptable and adaptable to the environment, we need to shut up and listen to the people who know their world the best, and then be able to answer questions that they have in a way that makes sense to them. And there's information that they can use from our experience and knowledge. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from those conversations is that you can come with an industrial security mindset and principles and theories and disciplines and all the fancy words, right? But that doesn't sit on top of a water utility and a specific role in a small utility, without there being some form of putting it all to the side. And you tell me what you need. What is it that you're looking for? And that's what I
Hmm.
learned from a lot of that program.
Hmm. What do you feel like is the hardest part of the work that you do?
Which part of the hardest part? The founder work, the product work, the go to market,
Well,
there's a
you tell me from your position. You can pick your heart.
sure. All right. Well, the hardest part isn't any of the hardest part isn't cybersecurity at all. The hardest part nowadays is getting attention and getting it the right way. So I mean, as much as Cabreza is a fantastic organization built with the right from the right from the right things, right? We come from the right place. We're mission oriented, doing all the right things. Frontline infrastructure program, free software for utilities, you name it, all the right things, right? That means nothing unless I can get that in front of an operator. And so, how do I do that? The information, the information realm of today is just full. It is completely full. And
Hmm.
so trying to find the right channels and avenues and ways of getting our message to be heard is the hardest part. That is it, hands down. There
Hmm.
are so many different. Everybody's competing for attention and priority, and especially when you're to your point earlier stage, right? Year and a half. I don't have 10 years a head start on this. I do for myself, but my company doesn't. But that's what I'm
Hmm.
competing against.
Hmm.
And so I have to find a way to fight without fighting. I have to find a way to grab attention without fudding. And there are all these different kind of challenges and restrictions and issues to navigate. Um, and that's the worst part, quite frankly. But that's where the opportunity is, and that's what we're chasing. At the same time, it's just equally the hardest part of it all.
Hmm. Is there something that surprised you about starting your own company?
Every day. Every day. If you ask I mean, hopefully I'm not the exception here, but I've got a list of 100 different things that I've learned, and they're all huge. Yeah, I learn all the time, and you also end up learning the hard way when it's you making the decisions and you figuring out what works and doesn't work. But yeah, I learn. The learnings are there are more learnings than anything as long as if you have a good mindset to it.
Yeah,
Um,
for
yeah,
sure.
that's
And if you use those mistakes and you don't do them again, then I think that's what really matters, right? To not
well,
repeat
yeah,
the
that's
same.
that's learning the lesson.
Yeah.
Any lesson unlearned is the one that you didn't actually learn from the mistake, right? So you didn't actually learn it. You're just doing it again. I do try. In the beginning, I wasn't very good at it. It was like, oh well, that's okay. I'll do it. I'll do it different. I'll do it a little differently this time. But then you get 6 months and a year in, you're like, no, I just need to pay attention to the fact that that didn't work, right? And just like
Hmm.
call that duck a duck and just own it and learn it and move on. In the early days, you kind of convince yourself that you have the thing that can change that. And later stage, it's less about changing and more accepting what you can't change and finding the next thing to do instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Across all of the operators that you've been at, SRA, Gartner, um, we can assume that there are some kind of common patterns that you see uh, across, you know, different kind of teams, infrastructure teams, and mistakes that they do. Um, what is like some kind of repeatable mistake that you see over and over these critical infrastructure teams make when they try to stand up an OT security program?
Sure, I'll call two out. The first one is my favorite, and it's called rules before tools. So what I often see is we don't, asset owner says I need OT security. I'm gonna go buy a tool, right? And you're gonna put the tool in, and it's gonna tell us what we don't know. It's gonna gives us visibility and all the and don't do it. Don't do it. Build your rules. Like, what do you want from the tool before you buy the tool? What do you need to get from the tool before you buy the tool? How are you going to use that data that you do get when you have the tool in place? That's what you do first. And that's, quite frankly, that's the hard part. But that's what makes the tool worth the investment in the first place, is that you have a clear understanding of your expectations. This way you can align that expectation to what happens in reality with that tool. And if there comes a point in time where someone's like, well, why did we buy this tool? Well, you can look back and say, that's because this is what we identified we needed, and we made that decision. So rules before tools. And there's a lot more within that to pull on, but that's the kind of the top line of it. The second point is probably the toughest one to really understand, is that a program, an OT security program, can be any size. Any size. It can have one control, and that could be your program. What I think it's lost, though, is that there people and organizations think that you need to have like multi-million dollars of investment, and you need to build all this up front, and you need to run all. Sure, maybe that's what your organization demands, and maybe you're a global enterprise, and like, yeah, that's the right fit program for you. That is not a program. That is not the program, though. That is a certain size or capacity or style or flavor of program. If you're a different size company, or you're at a different maturity, a program of any size is a program. And the reason why to build a program, though, is to set expectations, to have a strategy component to it, to be able to build a steering committee based on it. And a steering committee doesn't have to be like every top line executive in the company. Just pull somebody from the IT side, somebody from the OT side, pull from your engineering folks, pull from your operations and maintenance folks, and have them stacked with IT, and have an executive leader. There's your program start. That's it. But start there, because therein lies that you have the ability to build fundamentals across the board. You have a level of buy-in from the organization, because every OT security program of any size needs to be aligned to the business. OT is at the business point of a company. It's the distribution, it's the manufacturing, it's the keep going on down the list. Like, OT is what drives that. So it's closest to that bottom line. So the program needs to be built with the business in mind, which is why a program should really start fundamentally within those core concepts of leadership and fundamentals. But I see organizations kind of skip that, and or go for like a lot of the big money programs. Cool, great. You're gonna half of what you spend, you're gonna not see or lose throughout the process. But sure, fine. You don't have to do it that way. It can start from the smallest thing, start from what's achievable. Pick the top 2 or 3 priority focuses that you have. Focus on consequence rather than chasing risk. Like, there are just so many different ways to do it. I think there's this like innate thing that like, oh, we need all this money, or we need to go buy these tools. And that's just not the way it is.
Hmm. Where can people find you, Jason, if they would like to check you out, get in touch?
Sure. I'm pretty vocal on LinkedIn. I've learned to embrace my opinions, and I've put it out there in the public sphere quite a bit. Maybe too much, but no, I mean, that's, I contribute the way I do because I hope it helps people to see the contrasts and to see discussion and debate in the community. And I think that's all healthy, and that's why I do it. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me, or the Cabreza website, cabreza.com, and and then you'll see me there. And there's a LinkedIn and then email and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for joining, Jason.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.